Good evening, it's 9 o'clock. I'm Alex Armstrong. Breaking tonight, the BBC Director General has resigned.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
Tim Davie, the Director General of BBC, as well as new CEO Deborah Turness, have both resigned following a litany of scandals, including that misleading edit of Donald Trump's speech, framing him as inciting violence. Well, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy spoke earlier today.
I just wonder, have you watched it, and did you think it was misleading?
Well, I have watched it. What I haven't seen is the full version of the interview versus the clips that the Panorama programme showed.
She's not even seen the clip, has she? The Culture Secretary, for goodness sake. The White House has said this, though. Responding to this breaking news, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt simply said, "Shot chaser." Oh, damning stuff, isn't it? Damning stuff. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has said Davie and Turness going must be the start of wholesale change. The government needs to appoint somebody with a record of coming in and turning companies and their cultures around. And Tory leader Kemi Badenoch said Tim Davie and Deborah Turness had finally taken responsibility, but that a catalogue of serious failures at the BBC runs far deeper. Isn't that the truth? And we've heard from BBC Chair Samir Shah, who extends his sincere gratitude to both Tim Davie and Deborah Turness for their unwavering service and commitment to the BBC, by going on to say, "This is a sad day for the BBC," Shah says. Well, to talk about this massive behemoth of a story, on my panel tonight, the journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, and businessman and activist Adam Brooks. And more breaking news. It doesn't stop, does it? It's just dropped in the last few minutes. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, has spoken out. He says this: the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting / fired because they were caught doctoring my very good speech of January 6th. Thank you to The Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who try to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. And just listen to this. The White House throws its support behind GBNews. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said BBC News Equals is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GBNews. Wow, I'll just repeat that for you one more time. The White House has thrown its support, the Press Secretary has thrown its support behind GBNews. BBC News is dying because they're anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GBNews. Wow, what a bombshell. And that is what we do on this show. A huge 2 hours on this show tonight, plus all of tomorrow's front pages. I wonder what's going to be in them all. Let's get your news first with the brilliant Bethany Elsey.
Good evening, I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom at 3 minutes past 9. Tim Davie has resigned as Director General at the BBC following concerns over impartiality. Davie says he takes ultimate responsibility for mistakes and blamed personal and professional pressure for his decision. Deborah Turness has also resigned as Chief Executive of BBC News. It follows concerns over what the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has described as a series of very serious allegations and systemic bias in reporting at the broadcaster, including how a speech by the US President made on the day of the Capitol Hill riot in 2021 was edited in an episode of Panorama. BBC Chair Samir Shah is expected to give evidence at a Parliamentary Select Committee hearing tomorrow. The King has led national commemorations for those who lost their lives in the 2 world wars and subsequent conflicts. The royal family, senior politicians and thousands of service personnel and veterans observed a 2-minute silence at the cenotaph in central London. Some 10,000 armed forces veterans took part in the Royal British Legion's march through Whitehall, including 20 who served in the Second World War. Services were also held across the UK, including the Band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland leading a march through Edinburgh, as well as the Band and Bugles of the Rifles leading processions in Northern Ireland. Super Typhoon Fenghuang has made landfall in the Philippines, already killing 2 people and forcing more than 1 million to evacuate. It's the second typhoon to strike the region this week, bringing winds of up to 140 miles an hour, heavy rain and flooding. Typhoon Kalmegi hit the Philippines and Vietnam on Tuesday, killing over 200 people, and more than 100 are still missing. 3 people have died and more than a dozen injured after rough seas battered the Spanish holiday island of Tenerife. Huge waves swept 10 people into the sea at Puerto de la Cruz. 1 woman suffered a heart attack and died, and 3 others were seriously injured and taken to hospital. Another man fell into the water at a beach in the north of the island and was airlifted to hospital but died on arrival. The Canary Islands are now on alert for coastal hazards. And UK military personnel and equipment is being sent to Belgium after suspected Russian drone incursions on its airspace. Flights were disrupted at Brussels and Liège airports on Thursday after unidentified drone sightings, which were also reported at military bases and nuclear facilities. RAF specialists will be deployed alongside Belgian and German teams. The Kremlin denies involvement. You're up to date. More for you at 10 o'clock.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Well, Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has announced his resignation this evening amid allegations of bias at the corporation, it's understood. In a statement, Davie says there have been some mistakes made. As Director General, I have to take ultimate responsibility. The move comes following a run of scandals for Britain's national broadcaster after it was accused of airing a misleading clip of a speech by the United States President Donald Trump and failing in its coverage of Gaza and trans issues. Deborah Turnus, the broadcaster's CEO of News, has also resigned. And just listen to this. The White House has thrown its support behind GB News. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said this: BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. This is a bombshell tweet here. Let me just say this again. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, has said BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. And look, there's a massive story. This is a huge story, not just here in Britain, but now in America too. Well, joining us now is commentator Peter Thatchell, and the rest of my panel will be joining shortly. Peter, pleasure to have you in the studio tonight. Thank you for coming along. Look, the BBC has been embroiled in so many failures. We've got litanies of things I don't even know where to start, Peter, but is this the right decision? Should Tim Davie had resigned?
Well, first let me say the way Panorama edited Donald Trump's speech was wrong. It violated all ethical standards. But the essence of what they broadcast was true. President Trump did urge his supporters to march on the Capitol.
But not to incite violence,
hang on. He did say fight like hell. And at the height of the riot at the Capitol, he did not urge his supporters to stop the violence. So the essence of what the BBC broadcast was true, but the way in which they did it was totally wrong and unforgivable. In terms of the resignations, I don't think Tim Davie or Deborah Turnus should have resigned. It's honourable that they did, but it's impossible for them to vet and proof every single bit of the BBC's entire news output every day. There are millions and millions of words. They can't possibly do it. Their resignation takes the heat off the people who do wear responsibility, and that is the editor of Panorama and the people who signed off the film edit to go for broadcast. They are the ones who should resign.
But at the end of the day, the buck's got to stop with somebody, hasn't it? It really does. And it's the same we see in politics. It's constantly people in the civil service, middle managers getting sacked. But actually, at some point in time, when we're looking at... I mean, I have a a dossier here of things that have gone wrong since just 2018. Just 2018. And you have to ask yourself, at what point under your watch do you start taking accountability for not changing the culture, for not changing the way the bias is reported, for clapping down on people like Martin Croxall, who was just expressing the word woman. I mean, it does seem completely bonkers, doesn't it?
Well,
and it's where does the buck stop then?
I agree.
Tim Davie.
I agree the BBC have made some mistakes, but overall, in terms of their vast output, they've mostly got it right. And I think we should hold the people who made the mistakes accountable. They're the ones who should resign, not the head. You cannot expect Tim Davie to know everything that's being put out by the BBC and to personally approve it. So the people down the chain who actually did the programme and approved it, they're the ones who should go. But overall, the BBC is a fantastic British asset. It projects British values around the world. We mustn't do it down.
But what values, though, Peter? This is the problem people are asking. We want it. I mean, listen, in times gone by, and I've spoken to BBC reporters about this over the last few days, in times gone by, people would have said, yes, the BBC was worth the licence fee. And many people I don't think we would have disagreed on that 10 years ago. But this is the issue now. It's got its own version of British values. It's got its own ideological version. That's why we're seeing it making these litany of errors, is that it's ideologically rooted, is it not?
Well, there may have been some bias here and there, but if you take the trans rights issue, the big three trans stories of recent times, the Cass report on gender identity clinics, the Supreme Court ruling on biological sex, and the interim guidance by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, all those reports on the BBC quoted extensively critics of trans people. So the idea that the BBC is biased on this issue just doesn't stand up. There may be a couple of instances, or a few instances, out of dozens or hundreds where they got it wrong, but I don't think we should go, for the throat, the jugular, just because of some mistakes. Of course, we have to correct this. The BBC must learn from this and correct the future.
Peter, I want to pull you up in your comments about Trump, though, because I think you might have been slightly inaccurate here. The riot breached at the Capitol building at 2 p.m. Donald Trump put a tweet out at 2:38 urging his supporters to stay peaceful. It was half an hour later. So to say he never did that is wrong. Would you just like to retract that?
Well, I think it all depends on where you put the timing. He did, you're absolutely right, he did make an appeal for people to be peaceful, but the riot went on for many hours, and I don't think subsequently he did make any public appeal to the rioters to desist and stop the violence.
Well, he did it again. He tweeted again at 3:13. Trump again asked his supporters to remain peaceful and respect the law. I mean, then at 4 o'clock he says Trump posts a video calling for rioters to go home. That's 3 hours after the initial breach. So
three hours afterwards.
Well, the first tweet was at 2:30. It was 30 minutes after he heard anything was going on. He's saying, basically what he says here is 2:30. Trump tweets urging rioters to stay peaceful. So it was half an hour.
Okay.
I mean, we don't even hear the Prime Minister responding to incidents within that period of time. So I think we've got to give the President of the United States some leniency.
Okay. I'll give him that leniency. But he did say fight like hell, which is seen in that context as an encouragement to violence.
But again, Peter, I will say this, and listen, I don't want anyone to incite violence, and I've dragged people over the coals for doing that in this country. However, in America, I've seen Democrats going, we must fight. We've got to fight for this. We've got to take this and fight. It is a word they use. They're very sensational over there. And the way that Panorama had edited it, as you have agreed, I believe, it did look like he was saying, now let's go and fight like hell, when actually in context, those words he said don't have the same meaning. And that is the problem here. Right, I want to open it up to I've got this fantastic panel here, so we want to hear their views as well, don't we, of course. I'll briefly just read a quick response from Ofcom. Dame Melanie Dawes, Chief Executive of Ofcom, has said this: I'd like to thank Tim Davie for his contribution as Director General of the BBC. Over the past 5 years, Tim has led at a time of great change and challenge. The BBC is a strong and valued part of our media landscape, and the BBC board will now need to reflect on how it ensures the BBC continues to deliver for UK audiences. OK, well, I'm also joined by a fantastic panel tonight who are going to get involved in this conversation. Broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, former Labour Minister Bill Rammell, and businessman and activist Adam Brooks. Adam, we're having this big debate, of course. Should Tim Davie have resigned? Has he done the right thing? Has this gone too far? Should the buck stop with him?
Yes, 100%. He's the captain of the ship. And at the end of the day, one thing I would like to say is that for decades we've been gaslit and lied to by mainstream media in this country, especially the BBC, who have pushed their own narrative or the establishment's narrative. Over the last 10 years, social media has exposed that, and they can't lie anymore. And there is a reason why GB News is now the #1 news channel in Britain, because people believe us. People want to hear what the average man says. You would never see someone like me on a panel show on the BBC, because they do not want the average man to give their opinions. They want elitists, journalists, and people that look down on people like me to give their opinions and tell us how we have to think. Well, that has ended. And look, I'm pleased the BBC has been found out lying about President Trump. He might not be everyone's cup of tea, but you cannot start making things up and putting misinformation out there. You know, the saying FAFO, they've messed around and they've been found out. And it's glorious to see.
Yeah, and Linda, you know, again, going back to this, it seems to me, and the way I'm seeing this, is Donald Trump has taken down the BBC. He's effectively, after the Telegraph's massive piece on this, the President of the United States has intervened and gone, you know, and he says here, the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, in capital letters, are all quitting/fired because they were caught doctoring my very good, and he says, brackets, perfect speech of January 6th. Is this the right decision? And does it go far enough?
Well, the problem here is that I disagree with Peter. I do agree with Adam. Heavy the head that wears a crown. The fact of the matter is that this isn't just one mistake, and it is a massive mistake for journalism. This isn't just telescoping quotes or polishing up quotes when they've been a bit woolly in the edit suite. This is actually turning round the actual content of a quote by editing it, and that is deceiving the viewer. And it's not just this particular quote. And by the way, I think you can't just say, well, everything else about the programme was in essence true. Once you've made a gross breach like that, you have to be called to account for it. It's not just the picture editor, it's not just the editor of the programme, it is the editor of news, and it is the Director General. Because,
can I just ask you...
No, I'm going to finish what I'm saying, Peter. I didn't interrupt you,
Okay.
so please don't interrupt me. There is the stuff over Hamas. And that was when they used a little boy to narrate a programme without realising he was a Hamas official. There is this story, the Donald Trump story. There have been allegations of bias in BBC Arabic. There have been allegations of massive inaccuracies in BBC Verify. The clue of there is in the title. And so something has to happen. And it has to be, because in the Sunday Times today they said, well, you know what they say at the BBC, deputy heads will have to roll, because for too long they have sacrificed the careers of people lower down the food chain. Now, if you are going to get a change in culture, the person at the top has to go. And even then, it's not going to be easy to change things at the BBC, because it is a cultural thing that has to change, and it will be like turning an ocean-going liner around.
Peter, you'd like to come back?
I was just going to say that I hear what you say, but what was factually inaccurate in that Panorama broadcast? I agree the context was jumbled around, and that was wrong, absolutely wrong, but there was no factual inaccuracy in that report.
That's very, very disingenuous and a little bit arrogant to the viewer. It is factually inarrogant to use pictures to say one thing when another thing was meant. That is inaccurate.
But what is the factual inaccuracy?
That is a factual inaccuracy.
You can't cut up certain speeches and then jumble it around in the order you think that portrays the story you want the narrative to be.
I totally agree, but I don't think that the jumbling and mixing up was wrong, but I don't think the factual quotes of what he actually said was wrong. BBC just broadcast what he said. They jumbled it up, and that was wrong.
Bill, what do you make of all of this?
I strongly support the BBC, and I don't want a country where we don't have an independent BBC. I think it's important for news distribution, it's important for our national life. But I think on balance, Davie was right to resign, not because I genuinely believe there is institutional bias in the BBC, but the whole handling of this situation, as I understand it, they've had the Prescott dossier for 6 months.
That's right.
It's not at all clear what's been done, how it's been done, how they've been responded. And this has been running in the Telegraph for 2 weeks. There's been no coherent response and explanation from the BBC. I also think that some of this happens. And I thought Lisa Nandy was on the money this morning when she said there's an absence of editorial guidelines and clarity, so it's the individual journalists who end up making the decisions. I think there is an arguable case around the Trump expose, but I actually think much more serious is the BBC Arabic output, which I think has demonstrated really serious bias.
I think one more point, very briefly, is that another point here that we have to watch for, and it's understandable because of economic conditions, but the BBC has to use external producers to make programmes. It frequently does that. October Films made this programme with the BBC. The Hamas programme was made by a production company called HOYO, I believe. The problem there is it's very difficult to retain control of things, and also, because it's one step down the food chain, those people don't feel the same level of accountability that internal people at the BBC
I think that's
feel.
absolutely right, and it's been a developing practice over 20-25 years, and I think the BBC needs to rethink the outsourcing of too many of its programmes, where clearly there is a loss of editorial control.
My big concern about focusing on Tim Davie and Deborah Turness is that the people who actually made the decision, we've got no information about what's going to happen to them. They were the ones who actually let this go forward. They are the ones, first and foremost, who must be held accountable.
I certainly agree. Listen, I think there's some agreements on the panel, some disagreements on the panel tonight. Peter, thank you very much for joining us. Bill, Linda and Adam will be staying on the panel tonight. But also coming up, we've got former Conservative MP Daniel Korczynski and Reform councillor Jamie McIver in the studio to discuss this massive bombshell. The White House has thrown its support behind GB News. Press Secretary Caroline Levitt has said this: BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. Well, you're one of those lucky people because you're already watching. Stay with Alex Armstrong tonight. We will see you in just a tick.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid. That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airways before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Huge breaking news that dropped in just the last few minutes. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has spoken. And I think he may be watching. Hello, Mr. President. I hope you're enjoying the show if you are watching tonight. You have said, and the President of the United States has said this on a Truth Social post, the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting / fired because they were caught doctoring my very good speech of January 6th. And just listen to this. The White House has also thrown its support behind GB News. Press Secretary Caroline Levitt has said BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. And that is a bombshell, isn't it? Well, there we go. To talk about all this incredible breaking news now, I'm joined by former Conservative MP Daniel Kawczynski. I hope I've got that right, Daniel. You can correct me in a second if I haven't. Former Labour Minister Bill Rammell and Reform Councillor Jamie McIver. Right, well, Jamie, I'll start with you because this story is massive. It has really big implications because I'm sure the BBC is now going to have to go through some really serious thought about how it's behaved. I've got a litany here of things that have gone wrong at the BBC. From a reform perspective, do you think the BBC has treated you fairly in the past and your party fairly in the past? Maybe we'll start there before we get on to other things.
Yeah, I think it's hard for me to answer on behalf of the whole party, but I know personally from personal experience, I've been fascinated, even if you just look at the local media, how something major happens, for example, at county level, and they're just not interested, they run on nonsense stories. So I think the BBC ultimately has lost the trust of the British people. It has for a very long time. I think people watch it, but they don't believe it, and I think that's a huge insult to people that are supposed to be journalists, because if you spend time researching something, deliberately tweak it to make it feel untrue, and thinking your readers and watchers are that stupid that they don't actually realise what's really going on in the country. But I think ultimately, Alex, the BBC has lost the trust of the British people, and Nigel Farage is absolutely right. It has to modernise. They have got now, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this organisation to actually try and regain some trust. They need some sort of turnaround CEO from the private sector that's actually going to make it worthwhile. Because otherwise, look, I'm in my 20s. I do not watch the BBC. I have no interest in it. Even the soap operas now are so pathetic and DEI obsessive. They're over the top on the woke rubbish. People have just lost interest. You know, my generation don't have to watch this stuff. And actually, people like my grandparents are slowly getting very bored of it too. So I think they face an existential threat.
OK, yes, Daniel, I'll bring you into this as well, because, of course, there's been criticism of Boris Johnson, your former party leader, former Prime Minister, the other day, and he was having a row with Nick Robinson. It's in some ways about bias at the BBC. Do you think Tim Davie resigning was the right decision?
Well, in my 19 years as a Conservative Member of Parliament, I found it very interesting, my interaction with the BBC as a politician, compared to when I was being interviewed as an author, because I wrote a book about Libya. And I found it very, very interesting, the difference in approach. The BBC does some things very well, whether it's history, whether it's the planet and environmental programmes and all that stuff. But when it comes to politics, I'm afraid it's struggling because it's a state-run system, and the bureaucracy and red tape that's involved just does not give it the sufficient ability to be sufficiently independent and focused on what its viewers want. The strength of the GB News is most right-of-centre people want to tune in. You do what it says on the tin. You're a right-of-centre television broadcaster. The BBC has tried to be all things to all people, and the problem with sitting on the fence is you get splinters.
Indeed you do, Daniel. I think that is a part of the problem. And how do you wrangle bias out of a massive institution like the BBC? How strict do the guidelines have to be? We saw Martin Croxall being reprimanded for saying the word woman and then expressing the word woman. I think that's where they got really upset about it all. But the same hand, most people would go, well, that shouldn't be... We would agree with that reprimanding, but this doctoring of a Trump clip, which they've known about allegedly for 6 months, they've sat on forever.
Well, look, when was the first BBC broadcast? Was it 1936? I can't remember.
You might be right, I'm not sure.
Somewhere along that time. And the whole concept of we must have, in 1936, a state broadcaster. The state needs to involve itself in educating the masses. Those days are gone, and we're getting information from all sorts of different places, whether it's social media, whether it's foreign radio and international stations, whether it's private stations like you. Do we really need to justify hundreds of millions of pounds a year being spent on the state broadcaster when all of this media is out there anyway? It's a duplication of services.
That's true.
We should ultimately make the BBC justify itself or abolish it.
Yes. Bill, I'd like to just bring your attention to two party leaders who've issued statements here. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, said this. Davey and Turness going must be the start of wholesale change. The government need to appoint somebody with a record of coming in and turning companies around and their cultures. Preferably, it would be someone coming in from the private sector who has run a forward-facing business and understands PR. This is the BBC's last chance. If they don't get this right, there will be vast numbers of people refusing to pay the licence fee. And posting on X, Kemi Badenoch said Tim Davey and Deborah Turness had finally taken responsibility, but that a catalogue of serious failures at the BBC runs far deeper. The Tory leader also said in a statement, it's right that Tim Davey and Deborah Turness have finally taken responsibility and resigned from the BBC, as goes on to say, but let's be honest, this has been a catalogue of serious failures that runs far deeper. The culture at the BBC has not yet changed. BBC Arabic must be brought under urgent control. The BBC's US and Middle East coverage needs a full overhaul, and on basic matters of biology, the corporation can no longer allow its output to be shaped by a cabal of ideological activists. The new leadership must now deliver genuine reform of the culture of the BBC top to bottom, because it should not expect the public to keep funding it through a compulsory licence fee unless it can finally demonstrate true impartiality. There's a bit of a mouthful there.
Yes,
Bill.
well done.
But, yeah, well, I got it all out anyway. But I'll maybe just focus on Nigel Farage's comments, if you don't mind, Bill, because he's saying someone from the private sector must now come in and turn it around. Do you think that's a solution?
No, I don't see why it needs to be someone from the private sector. It needs to be someone who is committed to genuine public service broadcasting and who's committed to impartiality. Look, in terms of,
But can it be impartial?
Yeah, no, I think it can. And look, the accusations of bias. I was first elected to public office 40 years ago, and over the decades, I've seen the BBC being tough on politicians of all parties, and that is its job. And actually, and this is where I disagree with Daniel, the public broadly support the BBC. I saw a poll last week, 64% of people value it as a public service broadcaster. However, it has clearly, particularly in respect of its speed of response to these accusations, got it wrong. And it needs to change and respond as a result of that. And I think there does need, and Lisa and Andy made this point this morning, need to be editorial guidelines about the way stories are handled, so it's not individual journalists who are making these judgments.
Can I talk about Lisa Nandy for a second? She is the Culture Secretary, after all. When she was questioned about this doctored clip of Donald Trump by BBC Panorama, she said she hadn't seen it. I mean, was that complete nonsense?
No, I watched the interview on Kunzberg, and she said she had seen it, but she hadn't seen the full context. She can't be.
I mean, what full context do you need, Bill? Come on. She's the Culture Secretary. Let's just play it quickly for our audience. Let's just let the audience see it for a second. Come on.
I just wonder, have you watched it, and did you think it was misleading?
Well, I have watched it. What I haven't seen is the full version of the interview versus the clips that the Panorama programme showed.
Has just said.
Yes, so what you said is correct. She did say that. But she's the Culture Secretary. This has been on the front pages of the national newspapers, magazines for the last 3 days. It has been the leading story. The President of the United States is talking. Bill, come on. She's in the wrong. She does know about it, doesn't she? And she's just masking it up.
No, I don't think she is. And let's deal with the substance of the Panorama programme. I think you can make criticisms, but in my experience, all news organisations, for want of a better phrase, cut and paste speeches. And the essential essence of it... And I read Trump's full speech earlier this week to to remember exactly what he said. He did say people need to stand and fight. He did urge people to march on Capitol Hill, and the mob did, and 5 people were killed as a result of it.
And he said, he does say peacefully. He says we're going to go cheer and clap on our good senators. He doesn't say go there and burn it down.
All of that within a context in which he was making dishonest claims about an election being stolen. And I think that was utterly irresponsible and led to a mob and led to violence and murders.
OK, sorry, I'm sorry, but politicians all the time say we need to stand up and fight. And I'll say as a politician, we must stand up and fight to save this country because the country is in such a mess because of this awful Labour government. So people must stand up and fight, but people are grown up enough to know what that means. And the idea that Donald Trump had his speech unfairly doctored in order to try and portray a narrative, a biased narrative from the biased BBC. I'm sorry, it is unacceptable. And more importantly, this is the British state broadcaster here. This is our most important ally. It's the President of the United States of America. Our broadcasters should treat that man with respect, and the basic respect we could give him is impartiality. And the BBC failed to do that.
I'm going to go on to you, Daniel. Your party leader, Kemi Badenoch, has also said that this is the output has been shaped by a cabal of ideological activists. Is that right?
Well, all I can say is I, as a Conservative, will always argue that services provided by the private sector are more efficient, value for money, and more accountable to their end users than those run by the public sector. And whether it's the NHS, whether it's the BBC, or any of the other monoliths that we have in this country, which are run by the state, name me one which is really appreciated by the British public for the quality of service and value for money. I think you'd struggle.
Yeah, very true. Well, Daniel, Jamie, Bill, thank you all very much. Coming up, I'll get a much more top reaction on this evening's breaking news with their editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. As well as knowing this, I mean, this is completely bonkers, isn't it? The White House has thrown in support behind GB News. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. If you're watching President Trump, get your followers to come and tune in tonight. We'll have a great show, I promise. Thank you all. We'll see you in just a tick.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Not much sunshine across the central and eastern Mediterranean. Heavy showers and thunderstorms expected here. But elsewhere across northern Europe, mostly dry, settled with some sunshine. Though we are expecting some showers on Monday across parts of Portugal, also northern areas of France. These could turn heavy at times. And as we drift our way eastwards across the Mediterranean, turning more and more unsettled, some heavy showers and thunderstorms here. Into next week, we should see more sunshine, and alongside the sun, there should be some warm temperatures too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure dominating our weather pattern for the next few days, bringing bands of rain across the country, some showers, but it will be mild still. Winds coming in from the southwest, but over the next 24 hours we can see more organised areas of rain pushing north and eastwards, keeping it unsettled. And that will continue this evening time. Bands of rain across England and Wales pushing north-eastwards. Another band of rain across southern and eastern Scotland, as well as parts of Northern Ireland as well as we head overnight. In between, there'll be some clearer spells, particularly across central areas and perhaps sort of the northwest of Scotland, keeping generally dry. But a mild night for most. Temperatures in double figures, a little bit colder across northeast Scotland, and here we'll have some rain initially first thing, but elsewhere a mixture of sunny spells and showers to start Monday morning. Some of these showers from the word go heavy across southern England, pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some sunny spells into Wales, the Midlands, northern England with showers. Rather cloudy for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain which could be heavy at times, and rather chilly here, temperatures still in single figures. Through the day, what we'll see is the bands of showers and rain continue to push north and eastwards across much of the country. Some of this may merge into some longer spells of rain and give some heavy downpours across central southern England, pushing into northeast England later on in the day. Elsewhere, mixture of sunny spells, further rain across northern Scotland, but this clearing later on. Chilly here, temperatures 9 or 10 Celsius, but for most, again, mild, 13, 14, maybe locally 15 Celsius. In the best of any, sunnier breaks. And then it's wet and windy again on Tuesday as further weather systems move in. Rain pushes north and eastwards, accompanied by some strong winds. And the rain could be heavy at times too, perhaps sort of central and northern parts of Scotland holding on to the driest weather for longest, and it remains unsettled into much of next week as well, with further rain at times but remaining mild in the south.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. Of course, a reminder of that huge breaking news. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, a behemoth institution, has announced his resignation this evening amid allegations of bias at the corporations, it is understood. Well, in a statement, Davie says there have been some mistakes made as Director General that I have to ultimately take responsibility for. Deborah Turner, the broadcaster's CEO of News, has also resigned. To talk about this massive news, I'm now joined by the brilliant editor-at-large Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte, a pleasure to have you on the show as ever. What do you make of this news? Do you think it was right for Tim Davie to go? He's been on headline after headline this week since that big story in the Telegraph about the doctoring of Donald Trump's clip. Was this the right call?
Absolutely the right call. I can't believe he made it so late. I think he should have gone many weeks ago. Do you remember when the BBC put together a documentary about the Queen and it made it look like the Queen had stormed out? The very good, talented controller of the BBC at the time, Peter Fincham, resigned straight away. It was absolutely nothing to do with him. He was incredibly talented and he was much missed when he left, but he just did the right thing straight away. Yes, he knew it wasn't his fault. Yes, it was a production company. You know, that's how that was probably 10, 15 years ago. That's how things used to be done in the old days. But Tim, for some reason, I don't know what's changed in those last 15 years at the BBC, but I suppose I can guess. He just felt like he could cling on and get away with it. And ultimately he had to go. And he did make the right decision in the end. For me, I just would like to say the absolute straw that broke the camel's back is amongst the litany of errors was the Maxine Croxall thing developing. The fact she got reprimanded. So as well as all these mistakes not being apologised for, she gets punished and reprimanded. And it wasn't actually for what she did, which was correctly correcting pregnant people to women. What she was actually went down for was, and it said in her report, a controversial view about trans people through her expression. Now, I don't think you can reprimand somebody for their expression. She didn't roll her eyes, despite all the press reports saying she rolled her eyes. She slightly widened her eyes in shock because there was a mistake in the auto cue. I mean, it is very Orwellian to reprimand her for an expression.
Yeah, it certainly is. I was completely dumbfounded when they heard she was being reprimanded for that. Because at the end of the day, look, I read autocue. I know what it's like. There are sometimes words in there that are misspelled, or we get something wrong, and then you sort of you react because you're in the flow of reading things, and it's just a human thing to do. What do they want? An AI robot? I mean, this is the crazy stuff. But there's a litany of things here, Charlotte. I've got a whole list of things, including Gary Lineker, the whole scandal around that, the coverage of Gaza. Look, you're in the news business. Is there a problem, Charlotte, in the news business of people, of media companies wanting to get the most clicks and therefore having to do the most sensationalism, or is this really a bias issue at the BBC?
Oh, I think it's a bias issue at the BBC. I don't think it's a clicks issue, actually. To pick up on something that Adam Brooks said, and it's made me think about something that I've always taken for granted and never questioned and should have done, which is people at the Mail and in my newspaper, when they sometimes talk about moving on or what's next, they always go, well, of course, we can never go to the BBC, they'd never take us. And there is this thing that we've just taken for granted, which is actually, if you dare to report for something that's slightly right of centre or that isn't left wing, you are just, you don't even consider applying for a job at the BBC. And it's like Adam said, there's just this culture of they don't want people like me. And the people like me are people that basically notice things, and those things are the truth or facts. I mean, that's what they don't want. You know, these 20 people that complained about Maxine were complaining against her noticing something. You know, that's true. And that's the kind of thing that they don't seem to like at the BBC, you know, just sort of being realistic about common sense things that are actually happening.
Yes.
You know, and it's the same kind of sneering that they turn against the good people of Essex, who noticed that their community was changing because of the migrant hotels. And there's this kind of bias that they are right-wing, racist, and it's this sneering thing that you get in certain areas of London. I know that the BBC is now in the north of England as well, but they all are like this. And normally I wouldn't say that people at the bottom of any organisation or institution have to go, but I do think that from the bottom up, they need to change the kind of people that work in the BBC, because it's groupthink, and it is working for a big bloated institution. It's like working for or being a student at a university or working for the civil service or something. They've just kind of lost the ability to think independently, and they just all think one way. I really do think that about the BBC.
That was funny, because student politics came to my mind as well, Charlotte. We've got that clip of Martine Croxall. We just want to show it again to the audience, because I'm just dumbfounded every time I see it. And I think it really is a shocking thing, isn't it? Let's have a quick look.
London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who is involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions need to take precautions.
I don't see the eye roll either, Charlotte. That's the thing. Yeah. I have been saying this for weeks. Where is the eye roll? Honestly, crazy stuff. Charlotte, I just wanted to play that again before we go, because we were talking about it. I just wanted to refresh the audience's memory. But thank you so much for joining me tonight, as ever. Editor-at-Large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Thank you for coming on the show. All right, coming up.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
That is the clip that brought down the BBC's Director General and CEO of BBC News, both who have resigned this evening. Loads more reaction on the way very shortly. What could be the political and media ramifications for Britain? Stay tuned.
I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Of course, we're talking about that massive story this evening. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has resigned, as well as the CEO of their news organisation, Deborah Turness. Look, this is a big story. Big story, guys. Linda, Adam and Bill are with me this evening. Is this going to go far enough? Has this resignation gone far enough? Do we need to now talk about the licence fee, Linda?
I think so. I think this resignation was necessary. Both resignations were necessary. They should, in fact, have happened a little bit earlier. I thought they might happen, but I'm quite pleased they happened today. But I don't think it will solve the underlying issue, and the underlying issue is at the BBC is one of culture. So the resignation in itself is what has to happen because of events. But actually, if you want to address culture, the underlying culture, you've got to do a lot of hard work, and that is from the top down and from the bottom up. You have to be recruiting lots of different types of people, because the problem at the BBC is, I think, twofold. You've got groupthink, and you've also got something I mentioned earlier, where many independent production companies are used to make things for the BBC, and it's therefore very difficult for the BBC to remain in control of their output in terms of its content and its accuracy.
Well, Adam, what do you make? Does there need to be a scrapping of the licence?
We need to get rid of... To watch GB News on, let's say, a Skybox, we have to pay a BBC licence fee. Now, even if I do not watch BBC programming or content, I have to pay the BBC to watch channels like this, GB News. For me, I don't think people realise this is a state broadcaster. They might not say in its official term it's a state broadcaster, but we are forced to pay for this propaganda. OK? 2 million people have been prosecuted for not paying the licence fee since 2010.
Mostly women, by the way.
75% are women. Now, that is forced propaganda into your TV set at home. Something needs to change, especially when we've got misinformation and disinformation being passed off as the truth now. Now, as you said earlier, with the Gaza conflict, they've had to apologise, I think, 14 times for their coverage. The Arabic station, BBC station, were corrected or had to correct 80 different articles or content within the first 5 months of the Israel-Gaza conflict. That is basically lies. That is not a mistake. They are peddling lies, and we're paying for that. So I would like to see, personally, I wouldn't mind if there were adverts on the BBC. It wouldn't offend me at all.
Or a subscription like everyone else is moving to. You've got Netflix and Disney and all the big boys now do this, and they've got a massive entertainment arm, so it wouldn't hurt them. And they had millions and millions of people tuning in to watch some of their biggest shows over the last month, and that would generate quite a lot of capital for them. And I think, Bill, this goes on I want you to answer this question as well, because I think many people will say the licence fee is a very dated way of getting people to pay for the BBC, but not everyone wants to pay. And then, as Adam correctly pointed out, millions of people potentially essentially have all been arrested and prosecuted for not having a licence.
Well, not everyone wants to pay their taxes, but, you know, you have to abide by the law of the land. And look...
But it should... I think the question
to watch
is...
a TV channel,
should the law... Should that be the law?
Yeah, I think it should, and let me explain why. I think objectively, if you go around the world, in terms of public service broadcasters, the BBC is probably the best in the world. It provides, you know, a huge range of programmes, entertainment, culture and news and information. And the licence fee protects the BBC institutionally from political direction and government direction. And I think that's worth preserving.
Okay.
However, there is one change that I would make. I would bring the BBC within the remit of Ofcom.
OK, there we go. Well, don't go anywhere. Look, I have got Tim Davies' resignation speech here. I want to read it to you. We've got loads more on that in just a few minutes.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure dominating our weather pattern for the next few days, bringing bands of rain across the country, some showers, but it will be mild still. Winds coming in from the southwest. But over the next 24 hours, we can see more organised areas of rain pushing north and eastwards, keeping it unsettled. And that will continue this evening time. Bands of rain across England and Wales pushing north-eastwards. Another band of rain across southern and eastern Scotland, as well as parts of Northern Ireland as well as we head overnight. In between, there'll be some clearer spells, particularly across central areas and perhaps sort of the northwest of Scotland, keeping generally dry. But a mild night for most. Temperatures in double figures. A little bit colder across northeast Scotland, and here we'll have some rain initially first thing, but elsewhere a mixture of sunny spells and showers to start Monday morning. Some of these showers from the word go heavy across southern England, pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some sunny spells into Wales, the Midlands, northern England with showers. Rather cloudy for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain which could be heavy at times, and rather chilly here, temperatures still in single figures. Through the day, what we'll see is the bands of showers and rain continue to push north and eastwards across much of the country. Some of this may merge into some longer spells of rain and give some heavy downpours across central southern England, pushing into northeast England later on in the day. Elsewhere, mixture of sunny spells, further rain across northern Scotland, but this clearing later on. Chilly here, temperatures 9 or 10 Celsius, but for most, again, mild, 13, 14, maybe locally 15 Celsius in the best of any sunnier breaks. And then it's wet and windy again on Tuesday as further weather systems move in. Rain pushes north and eastwards, accompanied by some strong winds. And the rain could be heavy at times too, perhaps sort of central and northern parts of Scotland holding on to the driest weather for longest. And it remains unsettled into much of next week as well, with further rain at times, but remaining mild in the south.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
We could be delivering the perfect Christmas to you this year. There's £30,000 in tax-free cash to make 2026 the best year yet. A further £10,000 cash to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £1,000 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. And we'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace to Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good evening. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Alex Armstrong. Breaking tonight, the BBC Director General, Tim Davie, has resigned.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight.
Yes, that's right. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, as well as new CEO Deborah Turnus, have both resigned following a litany of scandals, including that misleading edit of Donald Trump's speech, framing him as inciting violence. Well, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy spoke earlier today.
I just wonder, have you watched it, and did you think it was misleading?
I have watched it. What I haven't seen is the full version of the interview versus the clips that the Panorama programme showed.
She's the Culture Secretary. She's not even seen the clip. The biggest news story of the week. Can you believe it? The White House, though, has come back and they have said this, responding to the breaking news. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt simply said, "Shot chaser." Now, former UK leader Nigel Farage has said Davie and Turnus going must be the start of wholesale change. The government needs to appoint somebody with a record of coming and turning companies around and their cultures. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch said Tim Davie and Deborah Turnus had finally taken responsibility, but that a catalogue of serious failures at the BBC runs far deeper. And we've heard now from BBC Chair Samir Shah, who extends his sincere gratitude to both Tim Davie and Deborah Turnus for their unwavering service and commitment to the BBC. He goes on to say this is a sad day for the BBC. And on my panel tonight to talk about this bombshell news, journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, Adam Brooks, businessman and activist, and the former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. The breaking news doesn't stop because the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has spoken out on this very issue. He has said this: the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting / fired because they were caught doctoring my very good speech of January 6th. Thank you to The Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who try to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. And get this, also broke in the last hour, the White House throws its support behind GB News. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said this: BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. Well, if you're one of those people, welcome to the show tonight, because we have a huge hour, including the first of tomorrow's front pages. I wonder what's going to be on them, eh? Let's get your news first with Bethany Elsey.
Alex, thank you. Good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom at 10 o'clock. Tim Davie has resigned as Director General at the BBC following concerns over impartiality. Davie says he takes ultimate responsibility for mistakes and blamed personal and professional pressure for his decision. Deborah Turness has also resigned as Chief Executive of BBC News. It follows concerns over what the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has described as a series of very serious allegations and systemic bias in reporting at the broadcaster, including how a speech by the US President made on the day of the Capitol Hill riot in 2021 was edited in an episode of Panorama. BBC Chair Samir Shah is expected to give evidence at a Parliamentary Select Committee hearing tomorrow. The King has led national commemorations for those who've lost their lives in the two world wars and subsequent conflicts. The royal family, senior politicians and thousands of service personnel and veterans observed a 2-minute silence at the cenotaph in central London. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, was among those who joined King Charles in laying wreaths at the monument. Some 10,000 armed forces veterans took part in the Royal British Legion's march through Whitehall, including 20 who served in the Second World War, 6 of them aged 101. Services were also held across the UK, including the Band of the Royal Regiment of Scotland leading a march through Edinburgh, as well as the Band and Bugles of the Rifles leading processions in Northern Ireland. Super Typhoon Fenghuang has made landfall in the Philippines, already killing 2 people and forcing more than 1 million to evacuate. It's the second typhoon to strike the region this week, bringing winds of up to 140 miles an hour, heavy rain and severe flooding. Typhoon Kalmegi hit the Philippines and Vietnam on Tuesday, killing over 200 people. More than 100 are still missing. And dramatic scenes at one of the world's most active volcanoes in Hawaii. Watching live pictures now from the United States Geological Survey, showing huge amounts of molten lava exploding out of the Kilauea volcano. It's been erupting periodically since December. 3 people have died and 15 are injured after rough seas battered the Spanish island of Tenerife. Huge waves swept 10 people into the sea at Puerto de la Cruz in the north of the island. 1 woman suffered a heart attack and died, and 3 others were seriously injured and taken to hospital. The Canary Islands are now on alert for coastal hazards. And UK military personnel and equipment is being sent to Belgium after suspected drone incursions on its airspace. Flights were disrupted at Brussels and Liège airports on Thursday after unidentified drone sightings, which were also reported at military bases and nuclear facilities. RAF specialists will be deployed alongside Belgian and German teams. The Kremlin denies involvement. Those are the latest headlines. More for you in an hour's time.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Of course, just to remind you of that breaking news, Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has announced his resignation this evening amid allegations of bias at the corporation, it is understood. In a statement, Davie says there have been some mistakes made as Director General I have to take ultimate responsibility for. Deborah Turness, the broadcaster's CEO of News, has also resigned. Well, joining me now to discuss this is former BBC Current Affairs producer John Mayer. John, thank you for joining me. We didn't speak that long ago, actually, for what I can remember, John. This is obviously a very, very difficult time for the BBC now. We've spoken a lot on this show already. 2 questions to ask you, because I think the last time I asked you this question, you said Tim shouldn't resign. He has now resigned. Was it the right decision?
This must be the most dangerous job in British broadcasting. 4 out of 5 of the last Director Generals have gone out of the building in coffins or been measured for coffins. And Tim is the latest. And when you've got Donald Trump and Boris Johnson accusing you of being a liar, you know you're in trouble. He had to resign because, look, this crisis is now 6 days old publicly. It's actually 6 months old within the BBC. They haven't seized initiative. They haven't got the narrative. You know, they should have put Tim and Deborah out last week saying, we made a mistake. We're very sorry, we made a mistake on this, and we put our hands up and say we're very sorry. Instead of which, they let it drag on. You know, the BBC likes to adopt what I call the armadillo defence. They put something above them, think things are going to bounce off. They don't bounce off, you know. Tim, by the way, let's remember, he's a recovering Tory. He was the Tory candidate. And you know, he was the right person in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he said he was editor-in-chief. Now, if you're an editor-in-chief, you take responsibility. And he should have done that all along, last week and a lot before. So he was right to resign. And the BBC has been poor at defending itself. You know, this is a crucial period for them, with the licence fee and the charter. And, you know, what do they say? We don't respond to leaked documents. Well, hang on a minute. That's called journalism, isn't it? Leaked documents. That's what the BBC does all the time, you know. And the question is now, how did it move forward? Who's the next DG? I'll put some runners and riders into the field. Jay Hunt, currently at Apple. Charlotte Moore, who was his number 2, gone on to other things. Alison Phillips, Esme Wren. It'll have to be a woman, because that's what happens. But you know, the lessons from this are, if you're attacked, defend. And defend, and if you're in the wrong, put your hand up and say, I was wrong.
And that's the problem, isn't it, John? I think you said it very eloquently there, that they have sat on this information for a very long time, allegedly, at least six months, some say, that report. And of course, it leaked to the public, and we've all seen the elements of it, and we've all been shocked to see. Well, not shocked. I think we all knew what was going on, but I think it just... I think maybe that was the wrong word there. Not shocked, but I think it reinforced the shock that we were all feeling, that the BBC is in this massive crisis. John, how much, when we talk about turning the BBC around here, how much work needs to be done? How bad do you think it is? How much time is it going to take? And is it actually repairable?
It is a wonderful institution. It's a national treasure, the 100-year-old national treasure. Everybody all over the world respects it and wishes they had a BBC. So it's not broken. It's nothing similar. 2 people have resigned, so it needs some new people in there, but also it needs better PR, better crisis management, better everything. You know,
that sounds like a lot of work, John. That sounds like a lot of work to me, because I think it's. I mean, I personally think, John, it's a culture shift that's needed at the BBC. And look, having worked in private businesses for most of my career, I think it's very, very hard to even turn around a 100-person company, let alone a company with thousands of people who all got their own political ideologies and their own assessments on the situation. I think it's going to be very difficult for the BBC.
Everybody knows what's good, what's right and what's wrong. People knew about the Trump thing. That was wrong. That's indefensible. You know, they knew that you go from A to Z and put the 2 together. That is wrong. You know, you can't defend it. So there are producer guidelines which were brought in many years ago to stop people doing this sort of thing. One very famous panorama producer, who better not be named, was heard in a cutting room. He cut in a film about the German elections, and he said to the filmmaker to replace every yar with a 9. Replace every yar with a 9. And the producer guideline was supposed to stop that, and surprisingly he didn't. And you know, Tim can't be responsible for every film, but people down the line, you know, who commissioned the panorama? Did they ask whether that Trump quote was fair? And did they actually go and look at the speech and see what it was? You know, look at the Gaza film 6 months ago. What's happened as a result of that? The huge inquiry. What's happened? You tell me. Yeah. You know, any heads rolled?
Yeah, and this is the thing. I think, John, we're waiting for more heads to roll. I think this is the first that I think should be of many. But, John, listen, we haven't got much more time, so thank you for joining. Former BBC Current Affairs producer John Mayer. Pleasure to see you as ever.
Always happy to join.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. And I'd also like to bring in now GB News presenter and superstar Ben Leo for us. We're live in Washington, D.C. Ben, listen, this is not just a British story, is it? This is an American story too, because of course, we've had that bombshell tweet, or Truth Social post, should I say, from Donald Trump. He said the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting, fired, because they were caught doctoring my very good, perfect speech of January 6th. Thank you to The Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. Damning stuff, Ben. Damning stuff.
Yeah, it's a bit quiet. First of all, excuse my voice. It's on the brink of going, so if it does go, I sound a bit strange. That's why. But yeah, it's been a bit of a quiet day in Washington today. Not much going on. Well, actually, the last 48 hours have been absolutely bombshell, Alex, as you said. President Trump is known as the peace president, or at least he likes to be known as the peace president. But when it came to the BBC this week, the gloves are off. And the nuclear missile he sent the BBC's way on Friday night with that absolutely damning statement, calling them leftist propagandist outlets, and every time Caroline Levitt and the president have to travel to the United Kingdom, they're forced to watch the BBC. It makes their day miserable. Well, that was the start of the president's war on the BBC, which you could argue has ended tonight. The only other lingering question remains whether he will sue the BBC, as he's done with ABC and CBS here in America. Will the resignations of Tim Davie and indeed Deborah Turness, the CEO of BBC News, which I argue is an even bigger resignation, for me that's pretty big, will that be enough to satisfy the White House? Tonight on The Late Show Live, stick with us at midnight in the UK. Myself, Bev Turner, we're going to be giving an exclusive behind-the-scenes rundown of how this whole operation went down, from the time that the Telegraph, more than a week ago, first revealed that the BBC was in hot water for splicing that Panorama speech, all the way through the week this week, what the White House was doing behind the scenes until that bombshell statement on Friday night. And yeah, you'll be interested to hear as well what the Press Secretary Caroline Levitt has told us tonight on The Late Show Live. We have an exclusive statement to reveal to the audience as well. So it's going to be a hell of a show on The Late Show Live tonight from midnight, so stick around for it. You do not want to miss it.
Ben, I cannot wait to hear that. I knew you and Bev would be working behind the scenes to get that scoop for us, so I cannot wait to see it. Of course, you know, they're saying, the White House is saying, watch GB News, watch it tonight. Trust me, that is the time. Thank you so much, Ben Leo. We'll see you again very, very shortly. Appreciate it.
Alex,
I've also got my superstar panel here with me.
One quick point.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Sorry, apologies. I know there's a delay, so I made that kind of awkward. But one quick point. This whole charade, you could argue it's President Trump and the White House that has brought the BBC down today. They just kind of nailed the final nail into the coffin. This has been going on for years and years and years. And actually, it's quite a sad day for the BBC. I'm quite sad because it used to be, as you'd agree, a great British institution, respected and renowned all over the world. But such is the lessons that they failed to learn from Brexit, from many other examples where they've dropped the ball over the years. That was the whole reason GB News came to imagination and indeed manifested into the channel we are today. By the way, for 4 months running, the highest rated news channel in the UK. We're beating Sky News and the BBC News channel. And it just goes to show they still hadn't learned their lesson. They still hadn't understood why droves of people were turning to the likes of GB News and alternative media. They still weren't understanding why people were cancelling their licence fee en masse. So I think, you know, beyond all the sort of the theatrics of it, it is a sad day for the BBC, and I just hope they learn their lesson. Big question now is it time to defund the BBC and pull the licence fee once and for all? Anyway, apologies for hijacking more of your time. I'll see you on The Late Show Live tonight at midnight.
Looking forward to it, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us as ever, because this is a very big story in America as well now. It really is. Linda?
See, I think that earlier I talked about the culture change I believe is necessary at the BBC, but one big thing that can happen, and I disagree with Bill over this, is the licence fee. It has to go. Now, when the licence fee was introduced, back in the, I don't know, the mists of time, people paid for a licence fee because they needed to operate a television set and watch the BBC output. As soon as commercial television started developing, the licence fee wasn't that fair. Nevertheless, we stuck with it. But now, in a media landscape where you have streaming, you've got Netflix, you've got Now TV, you've got Disney TV, you've got all these different sources, I don't think that the licence fee is fair. It's definitely not fair to have it at the height it's at now, and it's not fair to impose it on people, you know, who cannot afford it in a time of financial crisis. I don't think they should be paying that licence fee. I cannot see why you believe, Bill, that it's like a tax.
Well, sorry.
It's not a tax, is it?
It's about £3 a week, and I think it's good value for money to deliver
you
quality.
You do, but other people don't.
Yeah. Well, I actually think if you look at the polling evidence, most people take that view. But I'll tell you something else that struck me listening to Ben. And I've been on Ben's show many times. I like him and I respect him. But he, as a news presenter, is projecting partisan, one-sided political views. I do not want news organisations across the country operating in that way. And the BBC needs to be held to higher standards, and that's why they need to respond to this crisis.
I understand your sentiments around that. I don't think GB News ever pretends to be something that it isn't. We do not dress ourselves up to be an unbiased and completely down the line BBC. We're not taxpayer funded. People can switch us off, and if they don't want to watch us, we won't exist anymore. That is the difference. The BBC parades itself as this moral institution, a little bit like the government sometimes have been. I'm giving my opinion here, by the way. Everyone knows I'm giving my opinion. When you parade moral high ground, you have to then deliver that. And that's the difference. I mean, you're here tonight, Bill. You're here giving your opinion. You're here giving... You could tell me I'm wrong. Adam's here. He could tell me I'm wrong. Linda can tell me I'm wrong. The audience always hear two sides of the story. And unfortunately, that is not the case very often. When they put the Panorama video out, when they put that out, there wasn't two sides of the story. There was the BBC side of the story. And that is the problem. When you can be arrested for not paying your licence fee, that is where GB News is different.
Well, but there's not impartiality on BBC News. You know, on every panel like this, there's 3 from the right and there's 1 from the centre or the left. That's not balanced. But I accept the BBC has to be held and should be held to higher standards. And I don't agree with the critique around the Trump documentary. I do think there are other instances where the BBC has demonstrated bias, particularly through BBC Arabic. Yes. What troubles me about this whole situation, however, is that I think Davies' resignation to most people came out of the blue. I don't think the government knew it was coming. I don't think the BBC Board of Directors knew it was coming. The BBC institutionally is going to have some form of response. How it does that quickly without a Director General in post, I think is very difficult to see.
Interesting.
What gets me more as a father, especially of girls, is that the BBC has employed paedophiles and known child sex offenders. It protected Jimmy Savile and allowed him to continue his disgusting ways. And only recently, the face of BBC News, Hugh Edwards, was convicted of being a child sex offender. This is disgusting, and we're paying for his wages. Hugh Edwards was on £475,000 a year. People can only dream. I would dream of that money. Yet this man was a disgusting, I'd like to call him something else, but a disgusting man. And he was the face of BBC News. A lot of questions have to be asked. You know, we're paying for a service. 1, we don't want propaganda, and 2, we don't want child sex cases on our TV.
But also, I think that the licence fee has to go, because why can't the BBC operate in a normal commercial way? You may say, Bill, that it's only £3 a week, but it's a vast sum of money that is not given to other commercial broadcasters. Now, I can tell you, I think I said this on Friday night, I was at a very high-profile event quite a few years ago now, and I met a very, very senior BBC official, and we were discussing the fact that ITV was having a pretty hard time, and he said to me, well, that's not the kind of thing, Linda, we need to worry about, because we've got the licence fee money. Now, to me, that is unacceptable. I think the BBC gets a huge tranche of money that it doesn't earn, and right now doesn't deserve.
Well, listen, we're going to go for a quick break, but I have got his resignation, Tim Davies' resignation speech, in my hands. I've also got a very interesting statement from the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Can you have a guess? Write into me, gbnews.com/yoursay, who he has mentioned in his little tirade. Anyway, before that, it's never too early to think about the festive season, is it? And how could you get Christmas without GB News? Christmas is on us this year. That's right, 40 grand in tax-free cash to have all of your dreams. Here's all the details.
You could win your entire Christmas on us this year, all magically delivered to you in time for the big day. There's cash, £30,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also a further £10,000 to spend on all the gifts, the tree, the trimmings, everything you might need for a fantastic festive day. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £1,000 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag, so there's something for for everyone under the tree. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB17 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 8th of December. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Okie dokie. Well, later this hour, I'm going to bring you tomorrow's front pages hot off the press. But next up, Andrea Jenkins, Reform Mayor, is joining me, and I'm going to read out Tim Davies' statement as well. I'm going to get to see what Andrea thinks about her reaction to Ed Davies' statement. We'll see you shortly.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
There's a lot of tables out there that won't just have turkey on it. There'll be turkey and ham, and but I know some people that will cook 3 or 4 different meats. And obviously the joy of having turkey is that you can then make a turkey curry for Boxing Day and the subsequent days. So, you know, you should be having days of curry after your turkey lunch. I think for the masses, it's still hugely popular. You know, through the festive period at the Dog, we will have hundreds of people having Christmas parties, and most of them will order our turkey lunch or dinner. And then Christmas Day, we could sell it probably 3 or 4 times. The demand for people to go out for the traditional turkey roast is still massive. But hey, look, if you don't like a roast lunch, then why force yourself to have it on the, you know, probably one of the most important meals of the day in terms of bringing family together.
What about Sophie's point, Mark, about cost and spending £30, £40 on turkey? That is simply too expensive for lots of people.
Yeah, I'll never be able to defend or debate that. You know, I know more than anyone the challenges around food inflation, and a good turkey has become a huge cost. But I still think where people can afford the tradition, the joy of coming together, sharing a big turkey roast meal it's a brilliant Christmas tradition. But yeah, the food inflation, that's something we've talked about a number of times, isn't it? You know, it's crippling our business and it's crippling people at homes. I suppose the key thing to look at is if you know what you're doing with it, a good turkey will feed the family for many days. It's not just one meal.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yes, of course, bringing you that breaking news. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has announced his resignation this evening amid allegations, massive litanies of failures and bias at the corporation, it's understood. In a statement, Davie says there have been some mistakes made as Director General. I have to take ultimate responsibility. Deborah Turnus, the broadcaster's CEO of News, has also resigned. I'm now joined by political commentator Theo Usherwood. Theo, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening. I mean, look, it's bombshell stuff for the BBC, isn't it? Is it too little, too late? Is the damage done?
Yes, the damage is done. The question a lot of people, of course, have been asking is why over this particular scandal did Tim Davie and indeed Deborah Turness decide to resign? Incidentally, when your producer rang this evening, I was speaking to a friend who's fairly senior within the BBC, and they were telling me that the reason that the Director General stood down over this particular issue is that as we head towards the charter renewal, ensuring, or the government looking to ensure the licence fee, and then of course potentially a reform government that would look to strip away the licence fee. The BBC, like other broadcasters, is looking for other income, commercial revenue, and venturing into foreign markets like the United States, but not just exclusively the United States, to sell news is absolutely imperative. And of course, what the BBC is selling is impartial, unbiased, trustworthy news. And this story about the doctoring of this video completely cut against the grain of that. And that's why on this particular occasion, if Tim Davie and Deborah Turness had to stand down, because it wasn't possible to sell to an American audience that the American president had effectively doctored a video to make it sound like he said something that he didn't say. And that's why, rather than it be the MasterChef scandal or what happened with that, allowing a 13-year-old son of a Hamas official to present a film, a documentary about what was going on in Gaza, or rather it being allowed a ban to broadcast live on the BBC iPlayer death to the IDF, the Israeli Defence Force, it was this particular scandal that did for Tim Davie.
Yes, it certainly was. Theo Usherwood, thank you so much for joining me this evening to give your thoughts on this massive breaking story. Thank you very much. Joining me now is Reform Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire, Andrea Jenkins. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening. If you don't mind, Andrea, I'd like to start with leader of the Liberal Democrats statement, Ed Davie, Sir Ed Davie, because he's taken a little pop at Nigel Farage. Could you be surprised about this? Sir Ed Davie said, the resignations of Tim Davie and Deborah Turness must be an opportunity for the BBC to turn a new leaf, rebuild trust, and get this, not give in to the likes of Nigel Farage who want to destroy it. What do you make of that statement, Andrea?
It's the usual Farage derangement syndrome with him, isn't it? But also, don't forget that the BBC gave him a much easier ride than other channels over the post office stuff. So, yeah, maybe he owes them one, Alex.
Yeah, it certainly does. Well, there you go. Andrea, look, has Tim Davie made the right decision here and resigned? And do you think reform would scrap the licence fee? I know we spoke about this before, but do you think that's going to happen if you guys get into office?
First of all, I've been part of the Defund the BBC campaign right in the early days, years ago. I've been calling for this for years. The Conservative government didn't deliver it. It was in their manifestos. So I think that reform should deliver it. The thing is about the BBC, do you remember the Brexit years? I remember on Question Time, the Brexit bias. Your panellists have already mentioned about the paedophiles. But also, don't forget, the BBC was of the 100 genders. So, you know, it is deeply left-wing, it runs deep, and it's a bit like a jellyfish, Alex. You know, one of those jellyfish that that loses its head and another one grows back identical. The thing is, it runs deep, and you need somebody strong who will rip it apart, who'll defund it. And do you know, the two who's just left, they was getting over £1 million a year between them. I'll do it for nothing, Alex. I'll sort them out.
I was going to say, I suspect you just go and love that, just enjoyed ripping it apart, Andrea. But, you know, Nigel Farage has said tonight that they need to bring in somebody that can basically turn it all around, change the culture, somebody from the private sector. Do you think that's the right approach?
Completely, definitely.
What is it that's failed about people coming from the political sector or the civil service? What's failed there?
Look, you know, I've actually got a friend who used to work in the BBC, and they said that left-wing bias, it's just central. I mean, some of our local presenters are not so bad in Lincolnshire and in Yorkshire previously, but the main people at their HQ, it runs deep. And so they want someone to rip it apart. I agree with Nigel about the private sector. and be ready to sack a lot more people. But most importantly, defund it. If they want to be biased, then why should we pay for it, Alex?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I just think it should compete like every other broadcaster has to compete for the space. I'm a capitalist. I don't believe anything should be state-run, because then they end up like this. They end up a bit like political parties. They don't know who they're meant to be serving, Andrea. What would be the one thing you would change if you were to have control over broadcasting legislation, or perhaps the BBC? Where would you start, Andrea?
Well, number one would be defunding it. Doing like other broadcasters, where they, they get the advertisements, etc., and private funding. It's got to be that. And, I would like every social media account of all the journalists to ensure that, I mean, look at the Gary Lineker situation. When you got presenters on there who time after time, and don't forget, BBC wouldn't call Hamas terrorists. So we've got to get back to the basics, monitor who are the ones who's bringing down the reputation. But it goes deep, actually, Alex, because, it's a real threat to trade and defence agreements with the US.
Yeah.
And, this has got to be sorted out once and for all. But who will Starmer recommend? It's going to be somebody with his views. That is my fear. Only Reform will go in there and sort it out.
Yeah, I think a very, very brief answer, if you don't mind for me, Andrew. Do you think more heads need to roll after this?
Yes.
Yes.
And start with the left-wing presenters, have a good clean up. And actually, the newsreaders start saying that Hamas are a terrorist organisation.
Absolutely agree with you. There you go. Reform Mayor of Greater Lincolnshire, Andrea Jenkins. Thank you so much for joining me this evening, Andrea. Thank you. Pleasure as always. Bill Ramble's here, shaking his head. Bill, I promise you I'll let you come back to some of these points. We haven't got time at the moment, but we're going to talk. I'm sure our papers are about to land on my desk. The front pages for tomorrow about to land. So, look, each paper's got a slightly different approach. We're going to break it down. We've got it covered. This is going to be next. Alex Armstrong tonight, only on GB News.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Not much sunshine across the central and eastern Mediterranean. Heavy showers and thunderstorms expected here. But elsewhere across northern Europe, mostly dry, settled with some sunshine. Though we are expecting some showers on Monday across parts of Portugal, also northern areas of France. These could turn heavy at times. And as we drift away eastwards across the Mediterranean, turning more and more unsettled, some heavy showers and thunderstorms here. Into next week, we should see more sunshine, and alongside the sun, there should be some warm temperatures too.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to our latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure dominating our weather pattern for the next few days, bringing bands of rain across the country, some showers, but it will be mild still. Winds coming in from the southwest, but over the next 24 hours we can see more organised areas of rain pushing north and eastwards, keeping it unsettled. And that will continue this evening time. Bands of rain across England and Wales pushing north-eastwards. Another band of rain across southern and eastern Scotland, as well as parts of Northern Ireland as well as we head overnight. In between, there'll be some clearer spells, particularly across central areas and perhaps sort of the northwest of Scotland, keeping generally dry. But a mild night for most. Temperatures in double figures. A little bit colder across northeast Scotland, and here we'll have some rain initially first thing, but elsewhere a mixture of sunny spells and showers to start Monday morning. Some of these showers from the word go heavy across southern England, pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some sunny spells into Wales, the Midlands, northern England with showers. Rather cloudy for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain which could be heavy at times, and rather chilly here, temperatures still in single figures. Through the day, what we'll see is the bands of showers and rain continue to push north and eastwards across much of the country. Some of this may merge into some longer spells of rain and give some heavy downpours across central southern England, pushing into northeast England later on in the day. Elsewhere, a mixture of sunny spells, further rain across northern Scotland, but this clearing later on. Chilly here, temperatures 9 or 10 Celsius, but for most, again, mild, 13, 14, maybe locally 15 Celsius. In the best of any sunnier breaks. And then it's wet and windy again on Tuesday as further weather systems move in. Rain pushes north and eastwards, accompanied by some strong winds. And the rain could be heavy at times too, perhaps sort of central and northern parts of Scotland holding on to the driest weather for longest, and it remains unsettled into much of next week as well, with further rain at times, but remaining mild in the south.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. I have got tomorrow's front pages here. It's a bit of a mixed bag, so let's have a look together, shall we? The Independent are leading with this. A child like Jade goes missing every 2.5 minutes. The Metro. Tears of the Crown. The iPaper. BBC bosses quit over botched Trump film as enemies gather. The Telegraph. Davey quits BBC over bias scandal. The Sun. Beeb boss quits over Trump lies. The Mail. BBC bosses quit in disgrace. The Guardian. BBC Director General Tim Davies steps down over Panorama row. And I think we'll stick with the front page of the Telegraph for this, because it's covering some interesting stories. And I do want to go into some of the other stories tonight. We will talk about some of the other parts of the headlines here. But let's stick with BBC for just a second, Adam. Got an opinion piece here. She's saying he was, and she's talking about Tim Davie here. He was furious at critics and blind to the problem. So I think this is kind of the summary of what a few of our guests have said this evening, Adam, which is that Tim Davie himself did need to go because actually he wasn't grasping the issues at the BBC.
Blind to the problem. It's there for all to see. You know, I'm not an educated man. Left school at 16. I could see blatantly what was wrong with the BBC. How could this man not? You know, and that's the type of people that we've got at the top of the BBC and institutions like that. And that's what needs to change, Alex. That's just unbelievable that he was blind to that.
Yeah, because Anita goes on here and she says, I reported in the summer that Mr Davie was not only present at Glastonbury on the day that Bob Villan made their incendiary death to the IDF chant, but had been informed of it at the time. His failure to order that live stream be pulled from the BBC into yet another crisis.
Yeah, I mentioned that, actually, because I was doing a live shot with Ben on Friday evening, and I mentioned that Glastonbury situation because I think that was emblematic of the whole situation at the BBC. I mean, he was actually physically there, and yet he kept trying to distance himself and minimise the whole story, when really it was atrocious and offensive to almost everyone I spoke to about it.
Yeah.
And it's no good going down the food chain, as I've said earlier in this evening, blaming the guy with a bit of finger trouble in the OB truck or whatever. He had to sort of take... Well, not sort of. He had to take responsibility for what went on there, and he didn't.
And Bill, do you think there is a left-wing bias in the BBC? Because we've seen, you know, there's been a lot of criticism from Kemi Badenoch tonight from Nigel Farage and others. Do you think there's a left-wing bias at the BBC?
No, I certainly don't think there's an institutional bias. And you know, your interview with Andrea, when, you know, she makes these claims, I could give you a whole list of right-wing Conservative people who've worked within the BBC. Andrew Neil, I respect him, but he's a very conservative commentator. Guito Harry, who ended up as Boris Johnson's head of News and Public Affairs, you know, very conservative, worked for the BBC. Nick Robinson on the Today programme at university, he was a member of the Young Conservatives. Andrew Dick Gilligan, who got into an absolute slugfest with the last Labour government, conservative to his core, worked for the BBC. There's stacks of people from the right who've worked for the BBC.
But do you think now that in the last few years at least there seems to be more of an entrenched left-wing bias, even, you know, over success, even though they've got a conservative, you know, former politician essentially under Davey. Is there more that really they could do to tackle that bias? Because my biggest issue with it all is it tries to be biased and paints itself as unbiased, but actually it is.
No, I genuinely do not believe there is institutional left-wing bias. And my experience over decades of the BBC is that it's criticised from the left and it's criticised from the right. However, in respect of this crisis, and I think it is now becoming a crisis, the BBC needs to demonstrate why it didn't respond sooner and how it's going to respond to ensure that, particularly with the delivery of the BBC Arabic service, which I think is the biggest critique, how it demonstrates balance and impartiality.
Yeah, Adam, I'll just bring you to the front page of The Sun here. They're basically crediting Donald Trump for this. They say, US president tells him, "You're fired," one of Trump's famous Apprentice lines, of course. It does seem to be the case, doesn't it, Adam? Do you think there might be any backroom diplomatic discussions between Donald Trump's White House and Downing Street over this?
Yes, I do. You do not go against Donald Trump and not face any consequences. He's a man that does what he says. I wish we had a leader or someone in charge of this country like that. The man, you don't have to like him, but he's forceful and he gets things done. And there is no way, I think, calls to Downing Street and top officials say, if you don't get rid of these or you don't pressure these out, trade deals off the table, or I'm going to punish you with tariffs or whatever. This man gets what he wants, and I respect that.
But I do think, though, that I got the impression that Tim Davie and not so much Deborah Turness, but they were really on the track to resign at the end of last week, and that's what I said on air here, and that's before the actual tweets were put out from Donald Trump. So maybe there was a bit of backroom chit-chat going on, but I think the cards were on the table pretty early.
Phil?
I'm genuinely not convinced of that, Linda. I think, listening to the responses, and certainly within the BBC, it appears to have come as a bolt from the blue. How the BBC recovers, because you could argue, OK, the BBC immediately needs to take a whole string of actions before the new Director General is in place.
Yeah, and that's a problem. That's a very, very big problem, but I think that decision was made earlier on.
We're going to talk more about that. So, but listen, there's more on the front pages I want to talk to you all about at home. But let's remind you of this staggering tweet in the last hour, because the White House has thrown its support behind this brilliant channel, GB News. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said BBC News is dying because they are anti-Trump fake news. Everyone should watch GB News. Well, there you go. More updates from America as the nights go on. Don't go anywhere. This is Alex Armstrong Tonight. I've got a news story for you coming up next.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The Daily Mail are going on a headline, woke guidance to tackle absenteeism, and stop asking pupils questions, it makes them anxious. Now, of course it makes you anxious.
It's your job.
Yeah, so I mean, I get what they're going, and it's very easy to go with the popular view here. But I think they're not saying all pupils. They are asking to take into account that there may be, in certain sets of the classes, neurodivergent people, autistic, for whom it does make it up. So I do work with children who've been in care, and sometimes I've got people in the room who are autistic, and because I'm energetic and stuff, I've got to be very careful how I approach them. So sometimes, if I'm asking a question, I won't even look.
But Chris, I don't think that you can break up. You can sit and say, well, we've got Dawn, better not ask her that. Chris, I can't ask her this. And whatever. You know, you can't keep differentiating and cutting things up like that. I think you have to relook at what teachers are expected to do.
I think if we're preparing children for the outside world,
we have to be tougher with them than we are. Now, you can't wrap them up in cotton wool. The world does not revolve around them. They have to toughen up, sorry.
And you will be asked questions in life.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. So are you saying then exclude them from the classroom so that you can concentrate on the main body?
But yes.
Okay. Well, okay. I mean, okay, that might be a solution. Well, so you go back to having schools that cater for.
You see, when people say questions make you anxious. Yes, I was anxious.
Yeah.
We all are. I was anxious. I was anxious when I went to the track, and I was a World Cup athlete. I was still anxious when you go to the final. Yeah, we get that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News. Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, we're going to go on to a slightly different story now, because I know you heard a lot about the BBC tonight, but we will talk more about it if you are interested in that, because on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, they are reporting that asylum seekers, illegal migrants, will be offered £100 a week to leave asylum hotels. Adam, this reminds me of Hadush Kabatu, who was paid £500 to leave the country. I think many British people will be looking around going, why on earth do we have to pay them to leave? Why can't they just go? They've broken into the country. Surely we should have the final say on that.
This Labour government is taking us for fools, and I believe they are mocking us. Offering migrants £100 to leave hotels. They should never be in there in the first place. They've also offered £3,000 to migrants that have come from countries like Pakistan, Albania, Bangladesh, Nigeria, India. These people should not be here. We should just stick them on planes and get rid of them. £100 a week to get... What do they think these migrants are going to do when they're outside of these hotels? We've had rapists, murderers, sex pests, paedophiles amongst them. Without doubt, we've got ISIS, Hamas, Al-Qaeda operatives and African militia amongst these people in these hotels. This is a national emergency, and we're offering them our money. That's the money we pay.
It's kind of
for
crazy.
them to live.
It's crazy. I mean, Linda, this is the issue, isn't it? £100 a week, £400 a month. It's not small fry money here. This is benefits level money, and this is to incentivise them. I'm reading here that Home Office officials are drawing these plans up, and basically the idea is that on top of their taxpayer-funded support for their costs, their living costs of £49, £18 a week for migrants in hotels, the plan will be trialled next year, and they'll be incentivising them to live with people they already know, right? So this is part of their plan.
See, the whole thing about this is what the government wants to do is to be able to say that we're closing hotels and that we've got fewer of these people in hotels, thinking that we're not intelligent enough to work out that they have to go somewhere at someone's expense. The fact of the matter is that we can't really afford this at all. If people in the Home Office, and more importantly people in government, actually had to deal with this problem face to face, cheek by jowl, actually had to deal with it, they would start behaving differently. The fact of the matter is they're always several steps removed, and that allows them to behave in this way.
Bill, the issue here is that the taxpayer is about to stare down the barrel, looks like a thing of an income tax hike. That's what the reports are, at least. We don't know if it will happen. We'll wait and see. But if taxes go up and there's more money being given to migrants, surely people are going to be furious.
Well, look, my understanding is that no decisions have been taken on this. The context is looking at the experience of the Social Democratic-led government in Denmark that has dramatically reduced illegal migration. It's at a 40-year low in that country. And I think we should be proactively looking at what works elsewhere in the world. And this is one of a number of options. I'm not sure we will go down this route. If we did, it's a dramatic reduction on the amount of money that's being spent in hotels.
But isn't the problem, not the problem, but isn't the fact of the matter with, I was talking about this today with people, in Denmark and for that matter in Hungary, They've managed to reduce the problem, the problem there by not allowing people in without being very, very stringent about the conditions. It's not about shuffling around the deck chairs on the Titanic.
And that's what the government is looking at. So, for example, tighter rules on family reunion, a number of other measures. I think we should look at them to work out what
but my point is that Denmark
works.
isn't doing anything like this.
It gives 24 grand for an asylum seeker to go back.
We are going to dig into this story. We're going to, both of you will be joining me in the next show. We're going to really dig into this story because I think it's worth a very strong debate. And I want to end up on the breaking news tonight because it is the biggest part of the news, isn't it? Which is, of course, that Tim Davie has resigned. On the front page of the Daily Mail, BBC bosses quit in disgrace. Adam, I want you to have the final word on this. You're leaving us shortly. So, war in Gaza, transgender reports, Trump video, all this stuff. Has it gone far enough? Do more heads need to roll? Do we need to scrap the licence fee? Your final thoughts on the BBC
Yes,
scandal?
as I've said before, the BBC has been spreading misinformation and disinformation for decades. They've been caught out because we now get our news from social media and channels like GBNews. It needs to go further, scrap the licence fee. I'm sick of paying for something that I don't watch. So at the end of the day, I think that mirrors across the country. There needs to be a new model. I'm not bothered if they want to put adverts on there or a subscription service, but I really am considering cancelling my licence fee.
There you go. We'll have more on this after the break, including Zelensky says he's not afraid of Donald Trump, the Royals, of course, at the Senate after today, migrants offered 100 quid a week, and the BBC scandal. So much. Join me in just a moment for Alex Armstrong tonight. Late edition. Let's get your weather first.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to our latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure dominating our weather pattern for the next few days, bringing bands of rain across the country, some showers, but it will be mild still. Winds coming in from the southwest. But over the next 24 hours, we can see more organised areas of rain pushing north and eastwards, keeping it unsettled. And that will continue this evening time. Bands of rain across England and Wales pushing north-eastwards. Another band of rain across southern and eastern Scotland, as well as parts of Northern Ireland as well as we head overnight. In between, there'll be some clearer spells, particularly across central areas and perhaps sort of the northwest of Scotland, keeping generally dry. But a mild night for most. Temperatures in double figures. A little bit colder across northeast Scotland, and here we'll have some rain initially first thing, but elsewhere a mixture of sunny spells and showers to start Monday morning. Some of these showers from the word go heavy across southern England, pushing north and eastwards through the day. Some sunny spells into Wales, the Midlands, northern England with showers. Rather cloudy for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, with outbreaks of rain which could be heavy at times, and rather chilly here, temperatures still in single figures. Through the day, what we'll see is the bands of showers and rain continue to push north and eastwards across much of the country. Some of this may merge into some longer spells of rain and give some heavy downpours across central southern England, pushing into northeast England later on in the day. Elsewhere, a mixture of sunny spells, further rain across northern Scotland, but this clearing later on. Chilly here, temperatures 9 or 10 Celsius, but for most, again, mild, 13, 14, maybe locally 15 Celsius in the best of any sunnier breaks. And then it's wet and windy again on Tuesday as further weather systems move in. Rain pushes north and eastwards, accompanied by some strong winds. And the rain could be heavy at times too, perhaps sort of central and northern parts of Scotland holding on to the driest weather for longest. And it remains unsettled into much of next week as well, with further rain at times, but remaining mild in the south.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption.